Hello there. Thank you for joining us today. This is Southern California's APWA COVID-19 series, Impacts to Public Agencies. I'm your host, Tran, and I have the privilege to be the chapter president at Southern California APWA. And in this episode, we'll be talking with Mr. Carlos Castellanos in the city of Anaheim. Before we begin, I'd like to kind of do a quick overview of Anaheim. We've been going through some episodes already featuring LA County, LA Metro, as well as Ventura, but this hits home. I'm from Orange County, and Anaheim is one of the biggest cities in Orange County, if not the biggest cities as far as land-wise. It's home to a lot of things, most notably the Disneyland Park, theme park out there. That is probably the most a site that is most attractive to majority of folks throughout the world. And they experience quite a few of tourist activity out there, as well as some of our professional sports is out here. So you got baseball, you got hockey, and some performances throughout their wonderful city. And of course, they have a lot of different public works features and amenities out here that include some type of mass transit, as well as working in some vehicular traffic, pedestrian and bicycle traffic that is unique to Anaheim itself. So as you can see in this Google Maps view, the boundaries of Anaheim is vast. And we definitely want to talk to Carlos about what's going on with City of Anaheim and how are they handling the COVID-19 pandemic during these times with their city and the Public Works Department specifically. So Carlos, I want to welcome you to the program. Thank you for being with us. If you could introduce yourself, tell us about yourself a little bit, and maybe the background of what you do for the city of Anaheim.
Thanks, Tran. Appreciate you having me on and allowing me to share a little bit about what we're doing in Anaheim to deal with this current situation. So as you mentioned, I'm the city engineer responsible for the day-to-day operations of our engineering division within Public Works. I have the privilege of being a division manager and fortunate enough to be able to work with other managers and other directors throughout the organization with this issue, including serving as the EOC branch director when our director is in policy meetings. So I get to lead the way for our team out of the operations center. So as you mentioned, Anaheim is one of the largest cities in Orange County. We have a population of about 357,000 residents. In terms of FTEs, we have about 1,900 or so, with the 236 representing Public Works. Our budget is a large budget, about $2 billion. Our annual budget, with a good portion of that, about 400 million in general fund. And as we get into this conversation, we'll see how the TOT, which is our transit occupancy tax, plays such a critical factor in generating some of those revenues, and that comes from all of our large venues, Disneyland, obviously the biggest one, but also what we have at the convention center, what we have at Angel Stadium, Honda Center, and also our Grove. So with that, our capital budget for capital improvement for the capital improvement program is about $177 million. So the last few years that I've been there, we've been fortunate enough to be around the $200 million mark on all of our projects. So that just kind of gives an overview of the size of the organization and some of the things that we're responsible for within Public Works and engineering. Specifically, we cover development services, design of all of our infrastructure, and then also traffic and transportation services throughout the city.
Great. And one thing that Carlos didn't mention to you viewers is that Carlos will be the president in 2021 for our Southern California chapter. So we are proud and happy to have him on this program because it's important. I know he does a lot of volunteer work in regards to just doing association work and still has time to do his day job, which is being the city engineer for City of Anaheim. So we appreciate your time here. Thank you for being here, Carlos. And going right into the program, discussing COVID-19 and the impact specifically to public works services, how are you guys operating during this pandemic? Is there any examples of what you're doing and any advice or lessons learned that you may be able to provide to the viewing audience?
Yeah, sure. So I guess to just kind of kick it off, we as most cities, we're kind of really unsure on how this was going to affect our day to day. We knew that it was kind of slow moving. It wasn't like we're used to seeing some of our natural disasters. We've had obviously fires in the hills. We've also had some civil unrest throughout the city. So we're experienced with those type of events, but this one was a little different in the sense that we were waiting a lot, right? We were waiting to react, and we did some early things to get to try to get ahead of it, especially with our homeless community, trying to secure some beds and shelters and trailer sites. So we were able to do that, but beyond that, it was slow. And when the lockdown hit, we we had to figure out how to keep the city running somehow. So being in public works and engineering, we're responsible for a pretty large counter with tons of projects coming in on a regular basis. So part of that was, how do we continue to serve our development community? How do we keep our employees safe at the same time? So we put some practices in place, just like most cities, right? We put in the social distancing. We allowed some of our employees that could. We allowed them to telecommute, and then also had daily health check-ins. As far as the counter, what we did is we set up a remote drop-off and pickup site for those that needed to submit hard copies could do that. We also kicked up our electronic plan check process and quickly allowed and expanded that service to all of our development community to submit plans electronically, and then also receive comments and approvals through that system. So fortunately for us, we had a lot of those systems in place. It was a matter of just ramping them up, and we were pretty fortunate enough to have individuals that were well versed and experienced to get that going. And then here recently, with the reopening of City Hall, we just added a few additional measures to keep everyone safe. So our security check-in, which now allows us to track, who's in City Hall and who that individual is making contact with. So we have a tracking system in place in case something happens. We're able to trace that back. In addition to that, we did some work. Our operations department did some work to separate the employee entrance and the visitor entrance. So we have a back door to City Hall that was made exclusive for employees, but that required some major work at our parking structure to restripe stalls and get signage up in advance to the reopening just 2 weeks ago. So again, it's a kind of an ongoing effort, and now that we've been open for about 2 weeks, we're seeing what other additional modifications we can make to, again, just keep our customers and our employees safe.
No, that's good news, because not every agency has the luxury of already having programs, online programming that could help with this whole pandemic. It sounds like you guys were implementing that, and now you're just increasing that usage. So that's great to hear that none of us knew this was coming. So that is definitely something that is great to know that there was some pre-planning as far as where Anaheim wanted to go in regards to some form of online services. And now just the utilization of it and just the efficiency of it is increasing every day as we telecommute. So that's great to hear. Carlos, for a lot of APWA, and you're well aware that APWA has a lot of folks that are members that are not only public agencies, but private sector folks, those that have their own companies or just larger companies in themselves. They probably would like to know, and if you could elaborate on what City of Anaheim's doing in regards to the impacts this pandemic is having towards ongoing projects. What's the budget looking like, and what does that mean for the consultant world, specifically for Anaheim?
Yeah, so this is kind of the unfortunate piece to all this, is that although Anaheim was very responsive to the pandemic and doing everything we can to keep everybody safe, we took a pretty significant hit when it comes to the budget and some of what the projections show. So right now, I'm sure like a lot of cities, it's still unknown, right? It's still unknown.
Right.
What the actual revenues are going to be. It's unknown for how long and when, we will actually start recovering. But you hear in the news, right? And Disneyland had to delay their reopening.
Yep.
They were supposed to open up here in mid-July. Now it looks like it's gonna extend that for an unknown date in the future. So we're aware of that, and our finance team is working probably around the clock. Same thing with the city manager's office, just to try to figure out what this means in terms of dollar amounts. So one of the things that we're noticing is that, or what the early projections are showing is that, we're somewhere in the $75 to $100 million short for the upcoming year, which is
significant.
Quite significant. Yeah, about a quarter, 20 to 25% of our general fund, and that's making some assumptions here that Disneyland and the hotels and the convention center can open up in the near future. So it's really hard to say, but that's the early indication. As far as what we're doing to keep going and keep providing the services that we provide, we're having to be creative. We're having to look at our budgets very, very carefully, find out where we can actually make some sacrifices and some reductions, hopefully with the intent to not reduce the level of services too much. But first thing that happened right off the bat was, all of our vacant positions were frozen. And in Public Works, pretty large organization, we had about 10 positions or so that were frozen, and our director had to go up to bat and see which of those we could unfreeze and continue the hiring process for. So that's one thing that we were quickly able to settle on with the deficit in mind. Unfortunately, when it comes to consultant work, that's one thing that we're having to look a little bit closer, and we're having to figure out how much of that work we can now bring in-house. So we know there's opportunities there to bring some of the services, not all of them, but some of the services back in-house, because that means that's maybe hopefully one less position we lay off from the general fund. So that's how we're approaching it. We know that with the recent announcement of the Angel Stadium development and the Honda Center development, there's going to be tons of work for consultants on the development side. That I know will keep that process moving along.
Great, and that's good, because like for instance, some agencies don't have their own in-house staff that could do design work, or at least a portion of it. So that's good that you're keeping your staff busy and during these times, as well as just kind of working through some of the, I guess, growing pains of what this new normal is going to be for us. Speaking about, staff and employees, I noticed on your website when we went on here, and if you guys aren't aware of the City of Anaheim's website, it's anaheim.net. You can kind of look at it, what I'm showing here on the screen. They do have coronavirus, COVID-19 type of information specifically on a certain site, but we want to focus in and discuss more about what is Public Works doing and City Hall is doing. And what I came upon was the reopening, or what City Hall services are available during these times. So Carlos, if you don't mind, kind of discuss how that has been going, like what's been going on with the reopening of specifically the Public Works Department to the general public. How's that going so far? Any lessons learned? How's your own staff handling the additional, I guess, lack of a better word, stress of going into the office when they were working remotely, possibly before that?
So immediately after the state of emergency, we were quite fortunate enough that HR released a leave and telecommuting policy to address, many of these concerns. They were quick to react to this issue. They did the best that they could, given the information they had, to address a lot of those concerns. And then a few weeks, just after that, they reissued that policy with some additional concerns being addressed. So on that end, we were communicating regularly with the staff to make sure that everybody understood what was happening. We were at the same time, allowing and encouraging telecommuting for those that could, right, and their jobs didn't require them to be at City Hall, to take advantage of that, to just help with the density within City Hall, and the social distancing that was required. Unfortunately, some people did have to be at City Hall, and I think that's probably, the toughest situation is when you have, let's say an engineer of similar classification, and one can be at home, but the other needs to be at City Hall. That's tough to explain and to deal with. I think fortunate for us, we have a really strong bond. We have a good team. They're all very understanding, and and we try to be as flexible as we can, even with those individuals that have to be at City Hall. We also allowed somewhat of a flex schedule, allowing individuals to have a rotation, so that instead of being at City Hall 5 days or 4 days a week, we allowed 2 days of telecommuting and 2 days at City Hall, with obviously shifts being covered for that period that they were at home. So that's been ongoing. As things somewhat try to return to normalcy, we still have to keep the pandemic in mind, and we still have to make sure that we're cautious, right, and that we don't kind of relax with policies, and we don't stop doing the things that that we need to do to keep everyone safe.
Great. And I'm sure that the employees that are required to come in, they're understanding, and everyone else is understanding, because this is like we talked about. This is unprecedented. This is something that we never encountered before, and we're basically trying to get the information from the health organizations and the appropriate authorities, and then trying to make sure that that goes in with what the policies are at specific agencies. So yeah, that sounds interesting how you guys are handling the situation with your staff. I'm sure other agencies are in the same boat. But yeah, what do you foresee as far as Anaheim and the outlook of Anaheim to get back to what would I guess would consider normalcy?
Yeah. So first off, we're hoping that we get a hold of this situation, and that we flatten the curve. I mean, Anaheim is is in the news quite regularly when we're reporting Orange County numbers, just because, again, our population and being one of the bigger cities, one of the most dense cities, we're going to have a high number of cases. So we're hoping we get a hold of that. And then in the near future, we're hoping that the resort can reopen. We're hoping that, with guidance from the state and from the county, we can put a lot of measures in place to get our tourist segment of our market going again, because again, that's the revenue engine for our city in a lot of ways. So that's important that we get that going. Meanwhile, while all that is slowly being figured out, we're bracing for these budget reductions. We're hoping that we get some relief from the states, and for public works, we're optimistic that the MOE at the state level and at the OCTA level can be relaxed, and some of those targets can be reduced a little bit, so that our general fund exposure is not as much, and we can deal with the reductions a little bit better and still provide the service. So I think that ongoing discussion at the state level and at the county level about the MOE and those targets with all the general fund deficit in mind is important to keep pushing and having those conversations throughout the state.
Great. And for the audience's and viewers understanding, MOE is what now?
It's our maintenance of effort. So in order to qualify for gas tax at the state level and for fair share at the OCTA county level, they require a minimum amount of general fund to be invested in our roadway and transportation services that we provide on a regular basis, so that we don't supplant some of the money that they're providing.
Great. So it looks like, Anaheim is in good hands at this point in time. Obviously, things are dynamic right now and ever changing, but we really want to thank Carlos for his time today for our COVID-19 series episode. For all you viewers, thank you for continuing to support APWA during these times. If you like this video and would like to see future programming, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you have a LinkedIn account, please follow us. Those links will be shared in the description below. And so with that, that concludes our episode. Thank you, Carlos, for your time and the responses that you provided today. So until next episode, this is Tran signing out. Thank you very much for your time. Take care. Goodbye.